Sarah, I want to talk to you about where this president stands on LGBT issues because I know, big sigh, big breath. Because when I think about it, from Trump private citizen to Trump campaign to Trump president, you've really seen an evolution. Certainly.
Or a devolution.
Or devolution.
Yeah.
That's a better way. As a New Yorker real estate tycoon, Trump seemed fairly open-minded. He certainly had, I think, probably LGBT friends, LGBT associates on his campaign. He talked about how he is going to be the best president for LGBT Americans, that Hillary Clinton takes all this money from countries that oppress LGBT people. You heard Republican LGBT organizations like the Log Cabin Republicans praise then candidate Trump for even talking about LGBT people at the convention.
He got Caitlyn Jenner's endorsement.
The coveted Caitlyn Jenner endorsement.
Huge.
So we, I think, went into the presidency thinking, well, this Donald Trump, he's like kind of a clever guy. Like he knows that even in 2017, like you know, going after LGBT people is kind of off limits. Like wow, this was like pretty impressive. But that's not what we've seen from President Trump. So what do you make, A, of this de-evolution, as you call it, and then where do we stand today when it comes to Trump and his policies that impact LGBT Americans?
Well, I think that's a great question. I think first you're absolutely right that Trump, the private citizen, even before running for office, was probably someone who was apathetic, if not mildly supportive of his gay friends that he meets in Manhattan. I want to be careful of saying LGBTQ there because I'm not sure how many transgender friends he had. But I think once he started running for president, even with the sort of protests to the contrary that he was a friend of the LGBTQ community, Donald Trump did endorse pretty much every single anti-LGBTQ position that you can think of during the campaign. He committed to appointing anti-equality judges to the federal bench. He committed to supporting the ability of states like North Carolina to legislate discrimination. He committed to signing the First Amendment Defense Act, which is a bill that would legislate Kim Davis-style discrimination at the federal level. And then, of course, he picked Mike Pence, whose national profile rests in large part on being anti-LGBTQ. So I think once he started to run, once he was embraced during the birther movement and then prior to the campaign by the far right wing of the Republican Party, he maybe knew that he couldn't. He maybe knew he wanted to throw a couple bones to the LGBTQ community with some empty rhetoric, but he really did co-opt and adopt all of their policies. And then I think once he's become president, it's clear with what he's done, even to him, someone who's completely divorced from reality, that he can no longer even offer those empty rhetorical promises of being a friend.
And let's outline what he's done, because I always feel that with Trump, because there's so much going on and so much craziness, that the pieces of action that aren't at the very front of the headlines often get lost and forgotten. Right. So what has Trump done to hurt the LGBT community?
Well, it's a long list, so I'll keep it sort of the top lines. The first thing that I'll mention is 2 months after getting sworn in, or a month after getting sworn in, and 2 days after Jeff Sessions was sworn in as Attorney General, the Department of Justice and the Department of Education rescinded the life-saving guidance promoting the protection of transgender students that the Obama administration had issued a year before. This was guidance that didn't just say that transgender students should be able to access restrooms consistent with their gender identity, but that schools have to take bullying against them seriously, that students have to be called by the names that they go by and referred to with respect and dignity. So they rescinded that guidance. They made clear to the federal courts that they no longer thought that Title IX, the education protections based on sex at the federal level, included discrimination based on gender identity. He appointed in Neil Gorsuch a justice who is vehemently anti-LGBTQ, and in fact, one of his first dissenting opinions demonstrated just how much he wants to, as a justice, narrow the impact of the Obergefell decision and make sure that it's
the marriage equality decision.
The marriage equality decision, and make sure that you might be able to get the paper, but there are benefits that you aren't going to get, or there are protections that you won't have. His Department of Justice has said that they don't believe that gay, lesbian, and bisexual workers are protected under federal civil rights laws, which the Obama administration and a growing number of courts had acknowledged. And then, of course, most recently, the president, in his erratic tweet storm, declared that he'd be reinstating the ban on transgender service members. That's 15,000 active duty transgender service members, 3 times the amount that he's going to be sending into Afghanistan with a surge that he's threatening to fire.